Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. Last night, Donald Trump and Joe Biden met for the second and final presidential debate. Taking place in Nashville, Tennessee, the debate was moderated by Kirsten Welker of NBC and contained 6 subjects of debate. Well, 6 subjects and a few dozen tangents. But hey, at least this one was more civil. As one of our writers put it afterwards, well, at least that debate didn't make me want to punch the television, so that's a win. We'll get on to what all this means for the race 2 weeks out from the election in a moment, but first we'll take a look at what actually happened. There are only 10 days left until election day, and as such, we'll be really stepping up our coverage here on TLDR US. If you want to make sure you see all of our videos before election day, and in the aftermath of an inevitably chaotic night, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to support our work, then you can back us on Patreon, or donate through PayPal. Both of those are linked down below. The first topic was, unsurprisingly, the coronavirus. Here, Biden stuck pretty much to his regular talking points, and Trump did too, though with a couple of notable exceptions. At one point, the president claimed that the vaccine was coming in the next couple of weeks.
We have a vaccine that's coming, it's ready, it's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine.
This, of course, goes against all recent statements by the companies actually manufacturing the vaccines. And when pressed on this, Trump tried to back himself out of this a little bit by saying he meant that he hoped there'll be a vaccine soon. The second notable moment came when Biden quoted Trump's now semi-infamous comment, "I take no responsibility." And Trump shouted back, "I take full responsibility."
Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. Because he has never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that he came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
While his speech focused almost entirely on China and not much on his own mistakes, him asserting that he takes responsibility is still quite a notable departure from his previous assertions. The next topic was technically national security, but before we got there, we had to take a trip down America's least favourite reoccurring theme, emails. Specifically this time, Hunter Biden's. This whole thing was a mess, but essentially, Trump tried to claim that Joe Biden's son, Hunter, used his father's position as VP to gain wealth in foreign countries, and that Joe benefited from this.
All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you, they even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know, maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man.
This isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family.
The slight problem for Trump here is that he failed to make a cohesive attack on Biden, instead substituting substance for vague accusations. This might play well to his base, but to those unfamiliar with this theory, it might just come off as confusing. Regardless, Joe Biden obviously denied these claims, saying that he'd never taken a penny from any foreign nation, and calling on Trump to release his own tax returns. But, as they so often do, the tables turned, and Trump found himself on the defensive about his own financial predicament, specifically his assets in China. However, he did seem to brush these off with a certain degree of efficiency.
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is, everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's what it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe.
Anyway, if you want to see us discuss the whole Hunter Biden debacle, unpack what's real and what's not, then be sure to like this video and comment below. The conversation then turned to American families, which is basically a fancy way of saying healthcare and the economy. Once again, both candidates pretty much stuck to their talking points here. Trump called Biden a socialist, and Biden said that he beat the socialists in the primary. Then each said how the other would destroy Social Security.
Not a thing.
Kristen, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine, and when he and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroyed, and destroying your Social Security, and this whole country will come down.
If, in fact, he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
Though it's worth noting that on that topic, Biden's numbers against Trump added up better than Trump's did against Biden. During this section, there was a moment when Trump said that raising the minimum wage should be a state issue, not a federal one, which felt, well, weirdly normal. Honestly, it felt kind of comforting to just for a moment be debating federal versus state power. Remember when that was the biggest division in American politics? Imagine. Nostalgia for a time when each candidate didn't believe the other was a threat to democracy aside, the conversation continued on pretty much as it did in the last debate. Biden accused Trump of only caring about the stock market, and Trump accused Biden of trying to hurt the economy. There was also an interesting moment when Biden was talking about families sitting around the kitchen table, and Trump accused him of using that as a typical political talking point.
If you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making in the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. They're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about North Korea. I do want to turn to 10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about North
I'm not a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
that's why I got elected. Let's get off the subject of China. Let's talk around sitting around the table.
All right.
Basically, Trump tried to use this as an opportunity to paint Biden into a corner as an average politician. And this was clearly a strategy that he had in mind throughout the night. But more on that in a moment. The next major topic was the recent report that lawyers couldn't find the parents of 545 detained migrant children. Trump seemed to defend the state of affairs, saying that many of the kids were brought across the border by coyotes and cartels.
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had.
Quick response, and then another question to you.
These 500-plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? It's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Here again, though, Trump took the opportunity to attack Biden's time as a politician, accusing him of getting nothing done on immigration during the Obama administration. The president also pointed out that some of the cages his administration had stuck children in were built by the Obama administration. The conversation then moved on to race in America. Both candidates tried to empathise with the struggles of black Americans and attack the other's record on the issue. Trump took issue with Biden's work on the 1994 crime bill, which Biden still navigated around discussing too much. He did, though, say he made a mistake on a piece of legislation that put drug offenders in prison. Once again, though, touting his plan to replace incarceration for drug users with rehabilitation.
That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
Biden also memorably referred to Trump's comments on race as a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn. Trump, meanwhile, tried to defend himself by asserting that he was the least racist person in the room and that he'd done more for the African American community than any president since Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire.
Finally, the candidates debated climate change. Here, Trump accused Biden of helping the environment at the expense of the economy, and Biden tried to make pretty much the opposite argument, saying that industries like solar power and electric cars could be the future of the American economy.
I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs.
Near the end, Biden also said that he'd try to transition the US away from the oil industry over the next couple of decades, a moment that Trump clearly tried to frame as the spiciest moment of the debate. And that attempt at framing the night by Trump really tells us a lot about his strategy. The president has had a history of going off message, but last night he appeared shockingly disciplined. He had a plan and he went with it. That plan? Well, paint Biden as an ineffective career politician, maybe a socialist while you're at it. Trump's strength has always come when he's playing the part of the underdog, the challenger, and that's been hard for him to do as president. But last night, it felt like he was that challenger again. To his credit, Biden performed fairly well too. He didn't stumble, and it felt like he knew what he was talking about. And of course, Trump performing better than before kind of tracks when you're looking at the history. Incumbents tend to do better in later debates than they do in the first one. Somewhat famously, Barack Obama absolutely bombed the first debate against Mitt Romney in 2012, and of course, he ended up winning a second term. Will the same be the case for Trump? Well, at this point it's hard to say, but given that we're less than 2 weeks out from the election, we don't have to wait too long to find out. We'll be putting out a bunch of coverage as we approach that massive day, including one tomorrow about how Trump could still be victorious and his path to 270 electors. So be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we post a video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers for making videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then be sure to back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.